Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert, along with your very good friend, Father Joe Grimaldi, and we'd like to welcome you to the show, the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast, being brought to us by Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, the home of the Star Treatment. The family, entire staff, and it's a good one, want to say thank you for over 50 years of serving southeastern Lower Michigan customers. That's why so many Star customers are on their second, their third, their fourth, and even their fifth Lincoln sedan or stunning SUVs. Take a look at the Navigator, the Aviator, and the Lincoln MKC. That's the SUV that Father Joe Grimaldi and I are driving. Stop on by, say hi, have a cup of coffee. Summer is a great time to stop by 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield, have a cup of coffee, relax, and enjoy the company of one of our seasoned, certified sales specialists. You're going to find the Lincoln that you're going to want to own or lease. Stop on by Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln, located at 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield. It's the home of the Star Treatment. Well, did you have a good week?
I've had a great week.
Yeah. And just a quick, and then we can totally, no pun intended, walk away from the topic. But the new hip is doing well, right?
The new hip is doing great. It's wonderful.
Better than you ever expected, I bet.
Much better.
All right. Well, too bad we're not in the solicitation business, or we could get your doctor. Originally, by the way, you'll find this interesting. When Father Joe first called to make an appointment for his hip, and he was in such incredible pain, they said, the good doctor can see you in February of 2020. That's how booked these guys are.
Exactly.
That's amazing, isn't it? You think about how talented, what a skill it is, and then if you do it well, people want to get that guy.
But I had some good friends.
Yep.
That really changed that.
You know, a country singer once said, I got friends in low places, and that's me. You got friends in high places.
Well, I got the surgery a lot sooner than I thought I would.
We are going to talk about a difficult topic today. Are you ready to tackle it, sir?
Well, as ready as I will ever be.
Got an email, and it came to me. It was meant for me to share with you because I think the person, we'll say his name is Bill, is uncomfortable asking you to tackle the topic or at least discuss it. And that has to do with a situation in Indianapolis over the past couple of weeks. Two Catholic high schools were dealing with a situation where they had gay teachers. The Archbishop threatened two Catholic high schools to fire the teachers who were involved in same-sex relationships or else lose their Catholic credentials. One, a Jesuit school, refused and was notified that it lost its Catholic identity. The other, Cathedral High School, which was also threatened to lose its tax-exempt status, knuckled under and fired the teacher involved. It ends this way, and I'm quoting now, "Personally, I see the church's action being nothing short of blackmail." So where do you want to start? I'll start by asking you, what's your position, feeling about gay teachers teaching in a Catholic school?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the church requires in many of the dioceses in the United States, that in order to teach in a Catholic school, you must be following the Catholic rules and regulations. And what does it mean to be a Catholic? And how do you practice it? And by the way, that's something that I find very difficult to monitor. For example, you have teachers who don't go to Mass on Sunday. I mean, that's common knowledge. And yet, they'll sign that piece of paper saying they follow all the rules of the Catholic Church.
Let's stop for a second. Okay, for my sake and for others listening,
yes,
let's go over what the rules are that state unequivocally that you are a Catholic and you're asking for a position as a teacher, what umbrella is that put you under?
Well, to a number of things. I mean, and there's too many for me to enumerate right now. But I'll mention the important ones. Huh? First of all, you attend Mass on a regular basis.
Okay.
Secondly, that you are not divorced and remarried, and that, again, is a difficult thing to abide by many of the people. But the first one, I think, is very difficult to monitor because we don't know what they do on Sunday, okay, or Saturday night. And so for us to judge somebody, whether or not they're practicing their religion, is very, very difficult to say. When it comes to married, well, that becomes more public, okay? More people know that so-and-so is not married in the church. He or she is just living together with someone, or is gay and living with a gay partner. And so it's a difficult thing to hide. Huh? It's a difficult thing to ignore or to hide or whatever you want to call it. I think it's one of these things where it becomes public very quickly. I mean, let's face it, you have to live somewhere in the town where you teach, live in a place where there are other people that go to that school, and maybe some of your own colleagues live in that area as well. So everybody knows that you are living legitimately with a husband married in the church, or they all know that you've been living with so-and-so and so-and-so who is of the same sex, and so on. So it's not something you can hide so easily. So the churches, the schools, had to make a decision. Now, one of the things I want to get back to what was in that note in the beginning.
The gentleman we're calling Bill.
Yeah. The school that refused to abide by the government rules, the Jesuit high school, did they lose their funding?
Yes. They
lost their funding?
Yes.
Okay, and the other school continued to get their funding?
After firing the gay teacher.
Okay.
In other words, the Jesuit high school said, doesn't matter to us that the teacher is gay.
Even though it was over $1 million.
I don't necessarily know the shares. I don't know if there's a student population involved with the figures.
Okay.
I can't tell you that. The money was yanked.
Okay.
Again, this is relatively new in terms of news. It's only been over the past couple of weeks. And again, it's in Indiana, so it's not...
No, I've heard of
It's not the top... It's certainly made the national news. But the reason why it's made national news, in my mind, is because of the fact that it was a jump ball in Indianapolis where one said, no, we're not going to fire. The other said, okay, in order to get the money, we will fire.
But also because this is the Gay Pride Month.
The entire month.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been, to some, radical changes in the entire
system,
the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
For some people, that's very difficult. For others, not at all. So I was not aware of the fact that the Catholic Church can mitigate the situation by simply having this application that says that you abide by the Catholic rules and regs. All right? Is that on every application for a teacher attempting to become a teacher in a Catholic school?
For many dioceses, not all the dioceses.
There are conservative dioceses and more liberal dioceses, correct?
Well, for whatever reason, there are dioceses that have chosen not to have that part of the application.
It gets really kind of dicey for me in my head. So are they then, as a community, a diocese, are they accountable and in trouble with somebody? They have to be. They're breaking the rules.
Oh, the ones that say they don't abide by that?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a rule from on high. It's from the diocese.
Oh, so it's mandated and set by the diocese.
The particular diocese.
How would you consider Archbishop Vigneron to be in terms of how conservative do you think he is in this area?
I don't know.
Okay. It's an honest answer, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm just asking you. You've been involved in academics for 35 years.
Yes.
Were you ever in a situation like this while you were teaching?
No, because the last time I was in high school was in 1986.
Okay.
So things were quite different before then and even up to then. But I do want to say this much. The basic premise of the church is this. It does not recognize a marriage unless it's between one man and one woman.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be marriage that's recognized by the church. And so that right off the bat, that's a big thing for most people to abide by, because nowadays there are many people just living together and so on and so forth, whether or not they're married. I had a situation in a parish at one time where you had two gentlemen who were very active in the church. And they would be very great contributors, not just treasure, but their time and their effort and so on and so forth. And one of them was a grandfather who was visited by his grandchildren on a regular basis. Now, the word was that they were gay and living together, but they never really went through the contract of marriage that way. However, they were living together. And so the question came up, what does the church say about that? Well, the church says that unless you are married, you are not to take part in any type of intimate behavior or sexual conduct. So that whether you are male, female, a heterosexual couple, or a homosexual couple, you are not to partake in that kind of intimate situation. As a gay person, or as a single person, let me put it this way, a person who is not married, that person is not allowed, in quotes, technically, to interact sexually with anybody else until he or she is married. And so that whether it be a heterosexual couple, and believe me, we all know that there are many couples who are not married living together who are partaking in intimacy on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
But nobody really blinks an eye when they come up for communion. The priest doesn't know who's coming up for communion, and therefore he gives out the communion to all people that come up anyway. In the case of the two men, some people were wondering why they were getting communion from the priest. Well, the question was this. First of all, the priest did not know what their living conditions were. There was the rumor that they were living together, and for men to live together, there could be other reasons, and I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about this, but people live together very often to save some money.
Yeah.
They get together and they buy a house, and they each have their own quarters and their own way of life. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting at, we didn't know what goes on in the bedroom.
Right.
And we don't know what goes on in the bedroom of a man and a woman who are living together. So it's one of these things where we don't blink an eye when we hear about a couple who are living together, man and woman. But if it's two men or two women, it becomes a very serious situation. The two should be considered seriously the same way because they're both taking part in actions which go against the church's teachings. Maybe that was just too elaborate an answer.
I'm just. This is a tough one for me, but
it's a tough one for me too.
Here's my issue. Given the extremely choppy waters of the past few years, what you and I refer to as the "it never ends" scenario.
Right.
The history of Catholic priests, pedophilia, all sorts of sexual misconduct at the expense of so many. Can't deny it. People are pushing back hard. When you talk about a good person, a good teacher, with a great relationship with the student body, the faculty, no one is being hurt in this situation. I just don't get it, because in so many ways, to me, it is the pot calling the kettle black. It just seems that people are going to say, oh, okay, you can't, but we can. You follow that, right?
I know what you're saying, yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's counterintuitive in certain ways. It's hypocritical in a lot of ways. And it seems to me that this is the way things are. People are liberated now. It's 2020. It's not Gay Pride Day. It's not Gay Pride Week. It's Gay Pride Month.
Exactly.
And we did the same evolution in terms of, emancipation. And we did the same thing in terms of evolving with the African American community. This is going to continue to evolve. And where do you think we should be in this situation? You're in a position to, I guess, if you want to offer any opinions that you have.
Yeah, I live by the fact that we don't judge the sinner. We judge what the sinner does.
Right.
So it's the same thing here. We're not judging the person who is gay, but if he's living with somebody else, that certainly goes against what the church's teachings are. Mm-hmm. But that would be true also of the single person who may be 30 living with a young woman. And I don't think we react so strongly
Great point.
with that.
Great point.
And this is where I don't know, because my position is that I would like not to judge any of these people. They have enough answering to do to God, never mind to me, okay? Mm-hmm. So I do know what the church's rules are. We try to abide by the teachings of the church, and yet at the same time, there are a lot of injustices when you look at society in general. As I just mentioned, you have a gay man or woman in the classroom who's living with a partner, and you have
a heterosexual male with a heterosexual female,
right,
living, as we used to say, in sin.
Yes.
Well, I guess we still do technically say
correctly,
in sin.
Yeah.
So you're basically suggesting to me, if I'm taking this correctly, that on that application, that applies as well to a man and a woman living in sin, taking communion by all the rules and regulations out there. They should forego giving any money to that Catholic high school unless they fire those two teachers.
If we're saying that they have to follow the teachings of the Catholic Church,
yes,
those are the teachings of the Catholic Church.
That's right. Same thing with being a practicing Catholic.
Yes.
We would not have any teachers. We would have a few, Father.
Yeah, I really feel sad about that. I don't like to judge anybody. But if we want to just be practical about it, if you have to fill out that application and it comes across that you are living with in a heterosexual relationship but not married, you are going against the Catholic teachings.
Okay. I understand Bill's email,
yeah,
and I understand his concern.
Yeah.
I think Bill will be surprised that we decided to, or you decided to take on the topic. It's one that I have wanted to take on, and this is the first opportunity that I've had a reason to say, let's do this. We've covered virtually everything we can think of, the good and the bad. And unfortunately, there is going to be, and this isn't bad, I didn't mean to put it like that,
but it's challenging.
The difficult ones to discuss, because there are going to be people in this particular podcast that are going to be all over this map, all over it.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, I'll never forget the brother that constantly said to you when you said you wanted to become a priest, and he kept saying, let's pray over it. And so, if you don't mind, let's pray over this one, okay?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I say, do unto others as you would have done to you, and I say, let he who is without sin throw the first stone. Any final thoughts?
Without meaning one thing or another, what would Jesus do?
Yes. What would Jesus do?
I don't know.
And I think we'll find out someday.
Oh, we will. I hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
Pretty darn sure.
I have a lot of questions, so I have.
Oh, I got a ton of them. I can't wait. I'm going to ask the listeners to come back next week. What do you think? How about Sunday?
Yeah, I would like to see you next week, too.
All right, we have breakfast after he says Mass. Boy, he's a heck of a cook, this one, Father Joe. And now that he's got that new hip, boy, he flies around that kitchen. Thank you so much for joining us on the Father Joe podcast. I'm Ken Calvert. We'll see you on Sunday.
Good to be with you. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.